Hi, my name is Ruby Levine, and I'm here to debunk some myths about cooperatives. Something I hear a lot is co-op. That's like a hippie grocery store, right? And natural foods co-ops are a really important part of the cooperative movement, but there are all kinds of cooperative businesses. Any kind of business can be a cooperative. You've got things like Fifth Street Brew Pub, which is a brewery in Ohio that is actually largely frequented by Marines. You've got People's Books Co-op in Milwaukee, which is a bookstore that's run by volunteers. CHCA is Cooperative Home Care Associates. They are folks who come to people's houses and do medical care type work. Again, organized as a cooperative. Union Taxi Cab in Madison is a worker co-op of taxi drivers and support staff. And Arizmendi Bakery in the Bay Area is a network of bakeries that are worker co-ops. So another myth about cooperatives is that they're basically all the same as nonprofits. Cooperatives are businesses owned and operated by their members. There are some cooperatives that are incorporated under nonprofit statutes. Cooperative businesses tend to be incorporated as businesses of some kind. In many U.S. states, there are statutes specifically for cooperatives to incorporate that allow for a lot of the specific structures cooperative businesses may want in order to function. In states without cooperative statutes, cooperatives may incorporate under structures like limited liability corporations or nonprofit structures. This is something that varies a lot from state to state, and there's totally different rules in other countries. This is just talking about the United States. So another myth about co-ops is that they aren't scalable, so that co-ops are just these small enterprises in local communities meeting very local needs for a small number of people run by a small number of people. Those co-ops exist, they're real, they're great, but there are also huge national and international co-ops that meet large-scale needs. So you've got some big co-ops. Ace Hardware is a purchasing cooperative. REI, the outdoor equipment store, is a consumer co-op. They actually have over 11 million members. You have rural electric cooperatives. Here in Minnesota, we have Great River Energy, for example, which is an electrical utility that's owned by the people who receive power from it. Ocean Spray is a producer cooperative of the farmers who grow the fruit for its juices. And Bob's Red Mill, the grain company, is also a co-op. So you've got these big brands that function as co-ops as well. One example of a really big co-op is the Mondragon Cooperative in Spain. They do a lot of manufacturing, but they're also in a ton of different sectors. They have over 80,000 employees, and they brought in almost $19 billion in revenues in 2012. So they're really big cooperative, support a huge part of the economy in the Basque region of Spain. Definitely look into them more. So in the housing co-op sector, you have a place like Co-op City, which was founded in 1966 and is located in the Bronx in New York. It's the largest cooperative housing development in the world. About 50,000 residents live there, and it would be the 10th largest city in New York State if it were an independent municipality. So that's pretty cool. Another myth about co-ops is that they don't have any structure, that it's just a bunch of people sitting in a circle, figuring things out as they go, or people acting independently without any oversight. Some co-ops operate that way, maybe, but cooperatives can have many different kinds of structures. They can have a very traditional management type structure, which you often see in natural foods co-ops. They can be totally flat, but that does not mean structureless. They can have one boss. They can have multiple bosses. They can have no bosses because everybody is accountable to each other. So yeah, there's a lot of options within housing co-ops. It's very diverse as well. All co-ops are built around a shared set of 7 principles called the Rochdale Principles, which I highly recommend checking out for understanding the foundation of the values of cooperatives throughout the world. So another myth that I hear a lot is that co-ops are mostly just a bunch of rich white kids hanging out with each other, not reaching the majority of the population, not for everybody. And I just really want to stress that this is not accurate. Many of the ideas behind cooperation come out of communities of color. In most of the world, cooperatives are a form of economic solidarity among low-income people who are trying to, scrape out a living and create a place for them to thrive in a system that does not make a lot of space for them. In fact, one of the principles of Kwanzaa is ujamaa, which means cooperative economics. So these are principles that come from many places in the world and are applicable to many different communities. So in modern day America, I wanted to highlight 3 examples of cooperatives operating in low-income communities and communities of color. So the New Era Windows Cooperative is a really exciting story. The New Era Windows got started in Chicago when the former owner of this window factory, which at the time was Republic Windows, closed down on them with very little notice, which was actually in violation of the law. And a group of the workers occupied the factory and ultimately purchased it as a group. It's now up and running with 17 member owners, which keeps manufacturing jobs in the United States. I was able to see a few members of the co-op speak back in the fall, and Ricky Macklin, who's one of the member owners, expressed the feeling of belonging to the co-op as the difference between working for someone else and being your own boss is the difference between being alive and living. I think this is a very exciting story. I really recommend checking them out. There's a lot of documentation of their story on the internet, very worth looking into. So in an example of a really long-standing co-op, the Federation of Southern Cooperatives is a cooperative development organization that's focused on helping Black Southern farmers get and keep their land. They are currently working with over 20,000 families to support Black land ownership, enhance quality of life, and advocate for public policy to benefit their members and other low-income and family farmers. And this is an example where the Black farmers in the South were being very explicitly discriminated against, not being allowed to use the grain silo until all of the white farmers were done milling their grain. And eventually they got tired of it and went off and started their own cooperative granary that they could access themselves and not be so subject to that discrimination in that way. Si Se Puede Women's Cooperative is a women-run, women-owned, eco-friendly house cleaning business founded and owned by immigrant women in Brooklyn, New York. The cooperative ensures living wages for house cleaning work for its worker owners, who formerly were subject to a lot of exploitation. The venture was born out of the very immediate needs of the workers who were not making enough money to survive despite working more than full-time. Now workers can control their schedules and earn around $20 an hour on average. Circling back to Co-op City, which I was talking about earlier, they're also based in New York, and that housing co-op is over 50% Black people and almost 25% Latino people. They have a minimum and a maximum income to live in the space, which keeps it from being taken over by wealthy people. They also have over 8,000 members over the age of 60, and they have a lot of services designed towards allowing seniors to age in place instead of moving to assisted living facilities or nursing homes. So I think that all of these stories show how co-ops are for everyone. People from many communities are using cooperatives to address social injustice as well as their immediate economic circumstances. So finally, there's often this idea that co-ops are kind of marginal, that they don't have an economic impact. But really, there are over 29,000 businesses in the US that are cooperatives, which is 1% of all businesses. And if you'd like to look at other countries that have co-ops as an even more integral part of the economy, I would take a look at Spain or Italy, which both have very large cooperative sectors. Within the US economy, cooperatives contribute $3 trillion in assets, $500 billion in revenues, 2 million jobs, and $25 billion in wages. So co-ops are making a difference, co-ops can make a difference, and they're a great way to make a positive impact on the economy. Thank you so much for listening to this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. Please take a look around the NASCO library to learn more about cooperatives and look up some of the examples that I mentioned to get more context. Welcome to the cooperative movement, and I hope you stick around.